Robert Pinsky, former Poet Laureate of the United States. His most recent book is Singing School, Learning to Write and Read Poetry. Thanks for being with us, Bob.
Wonderful to be here.
I have to ask first, once you've been Poet Laureate of the United States, is your life then divided between before the laureate and after?
Well, I had an unusual time with that title. I did it for longer than anybody's done it, mainly to finish the Favorite Poem Project.
Mm-hmm.
And we made those 50 videos, the construction worker reading Whitman, Cambodian American immigrant reading Langston Hughes, and that goes on. The Favorite Poem Project has been adopted by the Poetry Foundation. We're going to shoot 5 new videos in Chicago. Then we'll go on to other cities, because the original ones were all done on the 2 coasts. And every July, there's a Institute for K through 12 teachers from the Favorite Poem Project. So for me, the title was nice. There were silly, nice things. I was introduced from the ring at a championship fight. We had a reading at the White House. There's all sorts of foofara of that kind that was very pleasant. But the serious thing about it for me does go on. It's not a dividing line. Except in the sense that that began the Favorite Poem Project, which I'm proud of. And after 10 years or so of that Teachers Institute, there are many hundreds of teachers, their students, their colleagues, and the point of the Institute is to start with the experience of a poem. Mm-hmm. They were to teach poetry as an art like music, mm-hmm. or dance, mm-hmm. or painting, or film.
I noticed the subtitle of your new book is Learning to Write and Read Poetry. I want to ask 2 questions. Is it possible to learn to write poetry?
It's possible to learn to play basketball. It's possible to learn to play the violin or the saxophone. It's possible to do accounting and be taught how to do accounting. All of those things, some people have a lot of gift for, some much less gift for. But both people who are unathletic or unmusical to a degree, and people who are quite athletic or quite musical to a degree, mm-hmm. can benefit from good teachers. Mm-hmm. I dare say, I used to love playing basketball. I would dare say if John Wooden was working in my high school, I would have been better at it. And I love playing the saxophone, and I actually went back to take lessons with a wonderful player, Steve Tully at Berkeley, and I got better. So you can't teach someone to be talented, but if they have a head for numbers and keeping things in good order, you can teach them things about accounting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason to make a mystery out of poetry or writing of any kind.
So you would encourage anybody who feels a hankering to write a poem to go ahead?
Absolutely. And the best first step is to think of some poem they love. Mm-hmm. And if they can't think of a poem they love, they should immediately run to a store and buy this book of mine to find a poem they love so that you're inspired.
Well, now the second part. I know for a fact from my own experience that you can learn to read poetry, because I was a prose reader exclusively until I was well into adulthood. And my daughter taught me how to read poetry.
It's beautiful.
And
it
opened up a whole new world.
That's wonderful, yeah.
But what do you have to say about learning to read poetry?
I mostly just give examples. My head note, there's a head note by me in every poem in the book, and I'm proud that in one of a poem by Emily Dickinson, the entire head note is, get it by heart. And I say in the introduction that I recommend keeping a computer file called Anthology. And anytime you read anything you like, save it into that computer file. Mm-hmm. So you have an autobiography of your taste. So immerse yourself in this stuff. And read the way a cook eats.
Singing school. You know, when I was learning, when I was being taught poetry in high school and college, I didn't hear any music. Of course, now that I've learned to read it, I do. What do you, obviously, music is important to you.
Reading aloud is the whole point of it. And I think the videos help. And it's not an actor. It's not the poet selling the poem with a great personality. It's not a professor. There's a glassblower who reads a Frank O'Hara poem. There's a Jamaican immigrant who reads Sylvia Plath's Nick and the Candlestick, I think, as well as anybody can read a poem. But you start with the experience of the poem, which is to try it out in your own voice and to feel, why would somebody need to say this? Further in summer than the birds, pathetic from the grass. What makes a person need to say that?
Well, if I may, I would encourage people to go to poetry readings as well, because I had a breakthrough at a James Tate reading. All of a sudden, I heard it.
Yeah.
You know?
And your daughter inspired you to go to that reading.
Oh, she loves James Tate.
Yeah, that's great.
But you're a great reader too. I heard you at the Palm Beach Poetry Festival a year or two ago.
Oh, that's when I read with musicians too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Do you still do that?
I do. There's a CD now called Poem Jazz with the Grammy awarding great pianist Lawrence Hobgood. And I've worked with Bobby Bradford in the Celebrity Series in Boston. I'm going to work with Vijay Iyer and his trio. So yeah, I do that quite a lot.
What was the origin of reading with musicians?
In a way, the origin was in my own high school and college days when I played music, sometimes even for money. I was a not very impressive saxophone player. So working with musicians now, it fulfills a childhood dream and brings back a pleasure of my youth that I thought was lost. And I think we do it in a way that's more musical than other times I've heard it.
Yeah.
It's not just musicians accompanying a guy reading poetry. I hope it's music.
When I heard about it, I thought that's a gimmick. But when I went and actually saw it, I was really impressed by how well it worked.
Yeah. People think, I think it works to our advantage. People think it's going to be corny or a gimmick. And then we do it, and it's musical.
Yeah, it's very musical. And the two forms play together really well, at least the way
They're sister arts.
Yeah. Yes.
It's all here.
Here's a question I'm asking all the poets. In 1993, I was at the Key West Literary Seminar, which was on Elizabeth Bishop. And all the poets there were making these grim jokes about how the only people reading poetry in America were poets. Now it seems to me that we're in an explosion of interest in poetry. It seems it's never been more popular in my lifetime. Do you agree, number one, and what would account for this new interest in poetry?
I never would have made that joke. The Favorite Poem Project was inspired by a conviction that there are lots of people who love the art of poetry in the United States, contrary to stereotype of Americans. And for the same reason that I'm skeptical about the people who make that joke, I'm skeptical about the idea of an explosion. This is a central art. It's like dancing. It's like cuisine as distinct from nutrition, or lovemaking distinct from procreation. It's basic. So it doesn't, I'm not interested in tracking whether it's hot or not. It's too large to be advocated for or to be going out of style. It's massive. It's basic to human life, is poetry, like dance and like music. So excuse me, Chauncey, for harping on something, but you go back to those videos and you'll see, I think, evidence of what I'm saying.
No, the videos are great. They're great. You've been writing at the top of your game for a while now.
Thank you.
What keeps the fires burning for you, the creative fires?
It's a good question and hard to answer. Like many of my poet friends, I'm almost superstitious about saying I can still do it. Maybe more than other arts, you feel, will I ever do it again? You know, I wrote a poem yesterday. Will I ever write another one? So what keeps you going is what started you, and it's partly a mystery. Probably my best answer is that I'll hear or read something, often a poem, but it might be a film or a piece of music that powerfully reminds me why I want to make art. A film that had a lot of effect on me that I saw a couple of months ago is 20 Feet from Stardom, and backup singers, and they love music. And you see these people now in their 60s, they start to sing together. They find they can do it. It sounds pretty good. And you see the joy come over their faces. And when Sting and Bruce Springsteen talk about them, you can feel the respect and the sense that the love of the art and mastery of the art is distinct from celebrity or fame or money.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys respect celebrity and fame and money and power. They also respect art.
Last question. Suppose you're going to sit down to read poetry for pleasure. Name 3 poets that you might pick.
Alexander Pope, Fulk Greville, Elizabeth Bishop.
Thank you very much. Robert Pinsky, Singing School, learning how to write and read poetry. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure.